Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Ananya Bhattacharjee. I'm an independent researcher and a teacher. Today we are going to do a module from the paper titled Women, Conflict and Militarization. Module 26 is about a review of female involvement in terrorism. We will be studying in detail the People's Will, the Black Widow, LTTE, Black September, and some contemporary examples of terrorism. This module will basically deal with the history of female involvement in terrorist activities, and it will also look at the various ways in which they have carried out different terrorist acts. The involvement of women in terrorism has been documented as early as the 18th century. Since then, women have carried out various terrorist activities in different militant organizations. Women from Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Colombia, El Salvador, India, Zimbabwe, and many more have participated in terrorism. This shows that women have been participating from different geographical locations and they are not restricted in terms of place. It has been estimated that women terrorists occupy some 10% to 30% of the total population in almost every organization, and in the last decade have taken part in some 38 domestic or global militant activities. Thus, one can understand from the statistics that it is not possible to neglect participation of women owing to the huge numbers and their constant presence. First, let us look at the organization called the People's Will. The first evidence of women's involvement in any terrorist activity was the assassination of Alexander II of Russia in 1881. On March 13, 1881, Alexander II was on his way from Mykolovsky Palace to his palace in St. Petersburg. While he was traveling, there was a series of bombardment on his carriage. It was an attack launched by a radical group called Narodnaya Volya, also famously known as the People's Will. People's Will was a radical revolutionary militant group that worked towards bringing about social and political reforms in Russia. This group emphasized the need to organize a political struggle against the state structure and also undermine the state. The number of female members was quite high in this group. 10 out of total 29 executive members were women. Moreover, some 11 terrorist activities were performed by the males during 1905 to 1908. The two women who were directly involved with the murder of Alexander II were Perovskaya and Jessia Gelfman. Perovskaya was given death sentence and was the first woman ever to be hanged in Russia for militant activity. Let us come to the next organization called the Black September. This is an organization where women have been involved in political violence. This is a terrorist group that supports the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, known as PFLP. This militant organization is mostly involved in hijacking aircrafts and demanding negotiations with the government for release of their members. This actually becomes a problem and a challenge for the government since they cannot yield to the pressures of the terrorists, which otherwise would have some serious repercussions. The group demanded that the PFLP members who were detained in Israel should be set free. Eventually, 3 airliners landed safely in some deserted regions of Jordan and Cairo, but the hostages of the 4th aircraft were successful in terminating the terrorist operation by overpowering Leila Khalid, a Palestinian woman who was in the charge of hijacking. The PFLP hijacked another aircraft with 300 passengers and demanded negotiation with the government and release of Khalid. Initially, the government did not succumb to the pressures of the militant group, thinking that it would encourage further militant activities, but Khalid was finally released after PFLP blew up the remaining 3 aircrafts. Khalid became popular as a Palestinian revolutionary and was considered a significant female leader of the PFLP by many women who were motivated to join the force. She is the first woman to have hijacked any airplane, and for the Palestinian, she is a symbol of resistance. She believed that she was a freedom fighter, and she encouraged her fellows to fight for Palestine until and unless the injustice and oppression was finished. Although Khalid stands out as a remarkable example of female leadership, most Palestinian women occupy secondary roles in terrorist groups. They do not perform leadership roles and are mostly employed as suicide bombers. This is probably due to the fact that they live in a society where rules are formulated by the patriarchal order for the terrorist groups and the society at large. Another woman named Reem Slayeraishi blew herself up at the major aerial crossing point between Israel and the Gaza Strip, killing at least 4 Israelis and wounding at least 7 others.
وكم حلمت بأن أهب نفسي لله تعالى، والله تمنيت أن أكون أول فتاة تنفذ عملية استشهادية بشرط أن يتطاير جسدي. هذه هي أسمى أمنيات التي طلبتها من الله.
الله أكبر! Militants training among the sand dunes of Gaza. Masked, armed, ready to fight, and female. Allahu Akbar! Training alongside men, they're calling for more Palestinian women to join Gaza's militant groups in the fight against their sworn enemy, the State of Israel. We are given rare access to some of these women. These 4 belong to the Salahuddin Brigades, one of the many militant groups in Gaza. Sitting beside a table of guns, rocket-propelled grenades and mines, the scene is carefully choreographed and the message is clear. This woman says the Salahuddin Brigades trained me how to use weapons, how to shoot and deactivate mines. She says, I am trained and ready to be a suicide bomber against Israeli soldiers. Jewellery on one hand, a hand grenade in the other. These women say they are ready to fight Israel in any future war, a prospect considered possible by both sides as cross-border violence has increased in recent weeks. Many in Gaza see them as freedom fighters, but they are reviled as terrorists by Israel and many Western countries. A second woman tells me she wants to fight Israel and is ready to die for her cause.
This incident has been considered as one of the deadliest terrorist attacks carried out by any woman worldwide. We come to the next terrorist organization called the Black Widows. This is a female terrorist group that fought for the independence of Chechnya, a federal subject of Russia situated in the northern Caucasus Mountains. It is generally regarded as an organization that mostly comprises of widows and relatives of people killed by the military of Russia in Chechnya. They have a unique dress code, black attire with a martyr's belt, and this dress code distinguishes them from any other terrorist group nationwide. Black Widows are Islamist suicide bombers who have considered themselves to be a manifestation of violent jihad. Many of these women were prepared by ways of narcotics and rape. Some of the pregnant women also were involved in many terrorist activities. The 2 first Black Widows that were involved in any terrorist act are namely Khava Barayeva and Luisa Magmadova. They ran a truck into the headquarters of a Russian special force in a village in Chechnya. These 2 women were the first suicide bombers employed in the revolution in Chechnya. The next terrorist group that we are discussing is the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, also famously known as the LTTE. This is a terrorist organization that supports the idea of creating a separate Tamil state on the island of Sri Lanka in order to stop the perpetration of the violence of human rights and foster a sense of equality for the people of Tamil.
The Tamil Tiger female soldiers in action in a recent battle against the Sri Lankan army. Most of these women are under 25, trained to kill and fight on the front line. They may be banned as a terrorist organisation in the West, but here in their heartland of northern Sri Lanka they are freedom fighters. This territory is Tamil Tiger's stronghold, and their formidable female fighting force say they are prepared to die to keep it that way. 20-year-old Malati shows us her prowess with the machine gun. She says she joined the LTTE at 19.
I feel satisfied when I kill the enemy. The hardest part is to face the shelling.
Off the battlefield, a softer side of Malati comes through.
It is women and children that are affected the most in a war. That is why women make better soldiers.
But what of her own future and children?
I will think about becoming a mother after we get our homeland.
She shows me her hero, the Tiger's first female suicide bomber. Would she do it?
If the leader permits me, yes.
None of the female soldiers get paid a wage, but they are ready to do anything for their commander, the elusive Prabhakaran, who they call our national leader.
He is commander, leader, mother, father, everything to me.
Voluntarily or coerced, many Tamil families in the north and east of Sri Lanka will give up one of their children to join the struggle. It is allegations of child recruitment and suicide bombing tactics that have put LTTE on the list of terrorist organisations in 33 countries. But Prabhakaran commands total support from his female commanders like Tamilini, who says the international community has got it wrong.
We are fighting against state terrorism, the Sri Lankan army. The international community should understand the difference between a freedom struggle and terrorism. We are not terrorists, we are freedom fighters. We do not target civilians.
Tamilini would not reveal the number of female soldiers, but says they have no problem recruiting girls or getting funding. But it is the Tamil civilians here that are the real casualties of the 24-year-old civil war. In this refuge live the women mentally affected by the conflict. Some say they have been separated from family members. Others claim to have been raped by the Sri Lankan army or have run away from the shelling.
The LTTE fought for some 30 years and is regarded as one of the deadliest forces who fought for the Sri Lankan state. As the name itself suggests, they showed indomitable courage and commitment for the cause of the state. A lot of women have been part of this group to ensure an end to the discrimination faced by the Tamil people ever since the Constitution of Sri Lanka was written in 1978 and implemented without any consideration for the Tamil people. A study states that the number of suicide attacks by women from the LTTE have been more than any other terrorist groups in the world. Female militants of the LTTE have caused huge losses to the government of Sri Lanka and some private firms. Out of 168 suicide attacks from 1980 to 2000, women were involved in approximately 30% of the attacks. An LTTE named Dhanu was associated with the assassination of the former Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in Tamil Nadu. This incident took place in 1991, killing at least 14 others. This happened at a time when India had just ended its involvement in the Sri Lankan civil war through the Indian peacekeeping force. Now let us look at some of the other terrorist organizations which highlights the participation of women. The first is called Partiya Karkaren Kurdistane. Vanop claims that the females are responsible for 1/3 of the LTTE's suicide bombings, but the numbers are even more impressive when we come to PKK. the females being responsible for 2/3 of all attacks. The PKK is an ethno-nationalist group whose key objective has been to create an independent Kurdish homeland from the territory inside Turkey. Let us look at the condition of women in the PKK. Young girls who were oppressed by their families joined PKK with the hope that they would be set free. Kurdish communities are highly patriarchal who do not allow women space, be it the case of choosing their husbands. The PKK took advantage of this situation and recruited many women and girls and promised them to give an equal status, thus eliminating any gender discrimination within the terrorist group. Next, we discuss the Chechen separatists in Russia. Cunningham states that the role of females in the Chechen separatist movement was initially limited because social and cultural restrictions prevented female participation or mobility. But since 2002, Chechens have increasingly utilized female in operation, especially as suicide bombers. However, the discrimination still continues since women are deployed only as suicide bombers and we do not see them participating in active combatant roles.
We're taken to a secret location where a woman greets us. Bese Hozat is number 2 in the PKK after Abdullah Öcalan. The group calls itself socialist and secular and says it makes no distinction for gender. At every level, a man and a woman lead together.
The PKK without women wouldn't be the PKK. It's a party based on freedom and equality between men and women.
To solve the Kurdish conundrum, the PKK favors local democracy.
Our model rejects nationalism, religious intolerance, racism, centralism. We're not in favor of an authoritarian project. Our objective is for all groups to protect themselves, for them to be the real power holders.
The PKK says it seeks to liberate all groups of people in the Middle East.
Our party isn't fighting for Kurdish freedom. We've already outgrown that mission. In this region, we're defending humanity, all people, all ethnicities, and all beliefs. They'll live together as friends and brothers, and they'll govern themselves.
What was that, comrade?
We should go.
Further up in the mountains, PKK fighters are training for combat.
We're in commando training and physical training. If there's an attack, we'll be ready.
They're gearing up to fight on 2 fronts. In Turkey, against the Turkish army, but also in Iraq, against the Islamic State group. They accuse Ankara of being allied with the jihadists.
Erdogan's party is the one that helped the Islamic State group the most. In fact, the press published documents that prove it. Turkey sends weapons and logistics to the Islamic State group. We all know this government has helped them.
Coming to the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, known as the EPLF, it is an organization that evolved as a result of anti-imperialist feelings towards Ethiopia. Prior to the Ethiopian rule, Eritrea had been colonized by Italy in 1890 and subsequently passed around to other European powers during the 20th century. Studies on EPLF show that the role of women and the impact of objectives on gender equality. Most women joined EPLF operation in 1973. Accounts of Eritrean struggle for independence agree that women played a major role at all levels within the organization. Women not only fought for the independence of Eritrea, but also tried to struggle hard against eradicating the discrimination that existed. They also tried to revolutionize the ideas related to marriage, motherhood, child rearing, childbearing, political involvement, and so on. Next, we look at the Mau Mau movement of Kenya. The Mau Mau movement of Kenya took place during 1952 to 1960. It was one of the most violent struggles of Kenya against the British. Although a lot has been researched on the Mau Mau movement, but most of the accounts are written by male. The memoirs written by men usually neglect the experiences of women from the main event. Many night raids were organized by the British Army and the Kenyan police to find the people of Mau Mau. The Kamiti detainees were strong and rebellious women, and rehabilitating them was a very difficult task. These women could not be easily swayed by recreation because the past scenes were unforgettable to them. It is believed that these women were tortured to a great extent that included mutilation of bodies, torture before murder, setting victims alive, splitting of the stomach of pregnant women, and so on. Although the stories of Gita Mayo remained unknown for a long time, recently many archival records highlighted the fact that its detainees and that of Kamiti were physically abused. Anderson comments that the use of force against detainees had become a nationwide policy in 1957 known as the dilution technique. Many changes that took place in the policy of rehabilitation in Gita Mayo due to the introduction of this technique. Let us look at some of the contemporary examples of female involvement in terrorism. A new trend has been witnessed in recruiting female terrorists since women are less suspected by the security forces of the country. In some cases, pregnant women are employed to execute terrorist operations. This shows that women's involvement in terrorism is both voluntary and forced. The trend of engaging pregnant women is seen in most of the other terrorist organizations as well, because doing this ensures the successful operation without even noticing by the military forces. The Al-Qaeda has been spreading the war of terror by involving women in various violent and lethal attacks. It recruits women and employs them to carry out various suicide attacks. Sometimes, women work in groups and target double or multiple suicide attacks. However, the role of women are seen to vary from place to place depending on the outlook of the terrorist organizations, where sometimes they are seen as active or passive agents. In 2008, 2 women were involved in suicidal bombings in the market in Baghdad, while a triple suicide attack was made to kill the Shia pilgrims in Baghdad that resulted in the death of 25 people. A Western European named Muriel de Gog, a suicide bomber, was recruited to blow up a US Army squad in Mosul. The origins of Al-Qaeda can be traced in the Soviet war in Afghanistan during 1979 to 1989. The male combats from Islamic countries called Mujahideen joined in Afghanistan to attack the Soviets. Al-Qaeda's central power is exercised from Pakistan and Afghanistan, and its networks include territories of Maghreb, Iraq, Indonesia, Somalia, the Arabian Peninsula, and Southeast Asia. Al-Qaeda also has its networks in other parts of the world, including Europe. It is seen that Afghanistan under the Taliban influence usually prefers women to work within the domestic space, and they try to maintain a strict physical distance. Osama bin Laden, the Al-Qaeda leader, however, believed that women have an active role to play in supporting their male combatants. Besides influencing the male fighters of jihad, women perform domestic responsibilities and provide material support. An Al-Qaeda publication from Egypt states, and I quote, "It called for women to support the Mujahideen in their missions, but only in terms of cooking and providing material support." Here we find a very conservative outlook towards women who are believed to be inferior to men in carrying out active, violent, combatant roles. So they are mostly relegated to the private space and are accorded the responsibility to provide supportive roles. Women support Al-Qaeda in the domestic sphere, which include work like helping men and families hide from authorities and live underground. So basically their territory of work lies within the household, and they are mostly engaged in carrying out household chores and restricted from engaging in the public. But there are notable exceptions. One is the case with Hala al-Qasir, a Saudi woman, wife of an Al-Qaeda leader, and she can be taken as an example. She is known as the First Lady of Qaeda and was popular for her skills of fundraising. She collected money from wealthy Saudis on the pretext of raising money for orphan children. However, she finally got arrested in 2010. The Al-Qaeda women have been playing an active role using false names and spreading terrorism with the help of internet. Bin Naj, a Saudi woman, has spread ideology through her online presence. Naj, I quote, was the media chief of Al-Qaeda in Saudi Kingdom. She operated more than 800 online clubs and blogs to promote the extremist ideology. She uploaded the extremist websites with audios and video recordings and official statements of Al-Qaeda. Similarly, Malika El Araud in Belgium instigated people to work towards jihad. Women therefore become an important agency through which ideologies of terrorist groups are spread, and people are easily influenced when a woman speaks for her cause. Although Al-Qaeda rejects women's participation in violent political activities, but women have been involved in a number of operations associated with terrorism and therefore have agency to speak and work both within and outside the domestic space. Samantha Liu White was born on May 12, 1983 in Northern Ireland to a British soldier and an Irish Catholic mother. She is also known as the White Widow and a mother of 4 children. She is branded as one of the most wanted terrorist women in the world. She is accused of plotting to blow up resort hotels in Kenya packed with Christmas tourists. She has launched a recruitment drive where she recruits young children and women to act as suicide bombers by bribing their families. She has been involved in the murder of some 400 people and is regarded as a key figure in the jihadist terrorist groups. Let us look at some of the case studies of the rebellion of the Mau Mau. Women played a significant role in the rebellion, taking on military, civilian and activist roles. One woman named Muthoni wa Kirima even rose to the position of field marshal. Women played an even more important role on the civilian front. They were crucial members of the passive wing, which provides supplies and intelligence information to Mau Mau fighters. Women were also members of the Mau Mau councils, which helped them to have an interaction with the government and make important decisions about the rebellion, as well as the high courts, which punished such rebels for transgressing. Several government reports in 1953 indicated the importance of women's contribution. In one report, it was revealed that the part played by women to aid the terrorists is considerable. The British were alarmed at women's involvement in the Mau Mau, as they had assumed that women would stay away from the rebellion. However, whenever there was scope, women's involvement became clear, and the colonial government decided to act. The government decided to detain those women who deemed to be most. Evidence of several abuses towards the Kamiti women were documented, and it stems from several sources. In a letter written by a group of women from Gitamayo in 1958, the detainees described that the beatings they suffered were unbearable, and they asked a simple question. I quote, "We want to know who has given these men permission to do that? So why are we beaten like that?" Unquote. This letter caused a firestorm in the colonial office, resulting in investigations into the treatment of the female detainees. However, rather than addressing the issue of the detainees' treatments, it appears that the colonial office tried to cover it up. Medical officials working with the women often ascribed such physical ailments to resistance or to insanity. Women in the camps who were struggling to walk, most likely due to injuries, were instead said to be suffering from a physiological inhibition, which made it difficult for them to walk. The label of mental instability was often applied to African women who were considered deviant by the colonial administration. This was especially true for women who had engaged in violence, as this was seen as abnormal female behavior, thus rendering them insane in the eyes of the British. In this module, we have discussed how women have participated in different terrorist organizations. We have read some of the major terrorist groups where women's involvement has been both active as well as passive. To make the student aware of the way women are affected by the violence that terrorist groups unleashed on society, this module has been designed in such a manner to understand and learn that women are not just victims, but they are perpetrators of violent activities. Thank you.